All right, episode 16. This is normally where I say something off the wall. So, I am saying something off the wall.
Roll credits.
Oh, that was lame. I hate off the wall comedy. Oh!
We should have their laugh just cut in right there.
I think I'll just cut in their clip. But in any case,
Do it.
welcome one and all on YouTube and in podcast land. You are listening to the Tangent Kings. Roll it. Welcome one and all once again to the Tangent Kings podcast. I am, of course, your humble servant, G. Michael Francis. I'm here with my partner in crime, my ever so reluctant Catholic, Mr. JJ Benks. How you doing today, sir?
I've had a thought-provoking week. How are you doing, Mike?
Oh, that is excellent. I'm doing great, man. You know, a little bit of off-the-wall comedy, and I'm good.
All right, shenanigans aside.
Oh,
it's my turn to be the straight man. Yeah,
fair enough, because I keep playing you.
I'm okay with this dichotomy. What do we have for this evening, Mike?
Oh, right to the chase. You're definitely starting to pick up on my habits. Oh,
I'll be Jamie Heidemann to your Adam Savage, but
I don't watch Breaking Bad, but oh, wait a minute. Oh. That's Mythbusters.
That's Mythbusters.
That I literally just thought about that as soon as I said Breaking Bad. I was like, wait a minute.
I was gonna say Jamie Heidemann to your Adam Savage, except we actually get dinner after work and we're good friends in real life.
Well, it's kind of hard for us to get dinner after work because we're, kind of 900 miles apart.
Can we, when I come down to Tennessee in the summer and when you guys come up here, can I actually come to your church? And is it possible? Okay, actual question.
Okay.
Is it possible to take communion at a Catholic church if I'm not a Catholic?
No, but you can go up and receive a blessing.
Oh, I'm okay with this.
Yeah. All you have to do is approach the minister with your arms crossed.
Oh, wow. What does he typically say?
Usually he'll say something to the effect of, I bless you in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Oh, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's usually very basic.
Oh, wow. I got to get into the rich kids club. Yeah, Dinah, we only drink grape juice at all.
Oh, here we go.
Isn't it, Dinah? It's just kidding. It's not actual grape juice. It's fine wine. Oh. My friend texted me. He's just like, what's your problem with people from Eden Prairie? I'm like, oh, no, it's people from Medina. It's like, oh.
Yeah. Offend people that I actually know.
Yeah, those people from Eden Prairies. You see, people from Eden Prairie, they're just liberals pretending to be Minnesotans. I was trying to make that joke you made like a while ago, and I was like, is this going to work? And it's like, it's not going to work. That's not how it goes. Needless to say.
It didn't work when I said it, dude.
No, it didn't. It didn't. No, he's trying to give me crap for that. But anyway, coming back to where we were. So what do we have for our show notes tonight, Mike? I think we're going to talk about a little bit of circling back to a topic we talked about towards the beginning of our launch when we launched several weeks ago.
17 weeks ago.
17. Well, it's been a very good 17 weeks.
Yeah, very good 17. I didn't even expect to get this far. I know I've said that how many times now?
Many times. But for 17 episodes, I think we've actually done very, very well. Obviously, we'll let the audience be the judge of that. But I'd say that from having no podcasting experience to kind of learning it as we go, I think we've done a pretty okay job.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But anyway, on tonight's schedule, besides a nice little glass of vermouth.
Ooh. Mike, what is vermouth?
Well, it's a wine. It's sort of similar to port, but it's a little less potent.
question.
Yes.
If it's similar to port, what's similar to starboard?
Oh, for heaven's sake.
The dichotomy's back. In the Navy. Da, 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 da.
Incidentally, what were you drinking? Because you told me you were going to tell me.
I did. So I'll give you 2 guesses and then I'll tell you what it is.
Well, I guessed Moscato earlier, and you said I wasn't too far off.
Mm-hmm. Not Moscato. And what was your second guess?
I said Roscato.
Oh, Moscato and Roscato?
Yeah, I think it's somewhat similar, but...
So it is a glass of Malibu rum.
That's not even remotely close.
Oh, no, but it's sweet. It's Malibu rum. Okay, I'm sorry.
In this case, it's vermouth.
You were in the correct hemisphere, just not specific geographic locations. And I mixed it with a little bit of Pina Colada Bang energy drink, so it's all very smooth. It doesn't taste with Bang energy drink. It's not like this sugary blast of what the heck is in this can, like sometimes Monster Energy drink can be, depending on which can you're drinking. With this one, it's it's all clear, so it's really a nice little treat to end the evening.
So you mixed a stimulant with a depressant.
Yeah, it's like eating the blue pill and the red pill at the same time. It's okay. The body evens it out, right?
Thank you so much for watching. Anyway, before we go completely off the rails or off the wall,
we already covered that, so now we're kind of just settling down.
5 times over.
Many times.
So on the overview tonight, I wanted to talk about this sort of hubbub that the Vatican about the Vatican statement. Mm-hmm. Okay, not so much the hubbub. I've been looking mainly into the statement itself.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll get into that in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll have sort of a recapping about our previous discussion of the role of the church and the state in society.
Mm-hmm.
We'll try to keep it very brief as to not absolutely bore people to death.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, because we were going to talk a little bit about going back to the subject, but we wanted to define maybe what the church is and what it should be doing, maybe what the state should be doing, and talking about how your perspective, not just your existing presuppositions shapes your whole worldview, but kind of talking about basic assumptions that people kind of take that kind of shape their whole perception of reality as a whole, including in their discussions with the church and the state and how those should be separated.
Indeed. And I trust you'll guide that part because my mind just went beep, beep, beep.
Mike flatlined. Dun dun. Yes, we'll guide through that and we'll have a good time.
Yep. And then we'll cap it all off with a book quote and then we'll call it a night. How does that sound?
Sounds great to me. Let's do it.
Incidentally, did you get a book quote tonight?
Oh, I do. I've got a great one in mind.
Thank heavens. So anyway, let's roll into this. And Mr. Benks, are you ready to kick a hornet's nest?
Oh, I am absolutely ready. Let's do it.
Okay. So, first on the agenda tonight, as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, Vatican on Monday released a statement. And I got it right here. And this is coming from what's called the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm reading from Fox News.
Okay.
Just a short little blurb. The Vatican decreed Monday that the Catholic Church cannot bless same-sex unions since God, quote, cannot bless sin. Mm-hmm. The Vatican's Orthodoxy Office, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, issued a formal response Monday to a question about whether Catholic clergy can bless gay unions. The answer, contained in a 2-page explanation published in seven languages and approved by Pope Francis, was, quote, negative, end quote.
Mm-hmm.
So you imagine that stirred quite a backlash.
Of course. I mean, it's been... Here's the thing that I think is frustrating that I don't think has been talked a whole lot about. In the last 5-ish years, basically until it was right during Obama's second term that things started getting so heated, not only about this particular subject, but a variety of subjects where you just can't talk about it. There's so much angry, festering vitriol invested in it against anything other than the established view that people just don't talk about it. So, for example, with the subject of homosexuality, what the view is that what the accepted view of it is that you must accept it, you must agree with it, it must be everyone must agree to it. Like Seinfeld made a joke about this like almost 20 years ago. They said they would make this joke where they'd be like, yeah, did you hear he's gay? Yeah, I heard he's gay. Now there's anything wrong with that. Oh yeah, nothing wrong with that at all. The accepted view, and I'm not obviously putting homosexuals down or anybody with feelings with that regard. I'm not putting it down. What I'm trying to kind of get across is you can't really broach this. You can't approach the subject at all. You can't have a different view other than I completely accept it. I completely endorse it. And I completely think it's morally acceptable and it's the right thing to do. Right. And you are we're going to attribute the worst things to you if you do not completely lockstep agree with that perspective. And so it's very difficult to discuss it. It didn't used to be for a while, but you can't really, there's no nuance to be had with regards to not just homosexuality, but what it specifically means is that it's recognized, gay marriage specifically is recognized by the state, and it really ought to be recognized by all religions, and it's morally right, or it's morally acceptable, or that you're gay and you can't change, right? These are kind of the views that are pushed, and you can't push back on that. So when the Catholic Church comes out and says, we're making a moral line in the sand where we said, look, this is the foundation of the church are the teachings of Christ and the teachings in the Bible. In many ways, maybe not, and correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah,
this is
you're pretty much right on the head. Yeah, it's the teachings of Christ and the revelation of God, which is passed from Christ through the apostolic succession.
Yeah. And we could get into a discussion specifically about the church, but just in terms of the Bible's the founding document of the church, and the Bible on certain things is very, very clear how it feels about certain things like that, certain subjects like that. Obviously, so the problem is that you can't say what the Bible's view is on the subject, because it's a very, very strong feelings about it, and you get very, very viciously attacked for it, right? And so for the Pope to come out and say, we're going to make this kind of this stance, even if he puts it in a very non-judgmental or a calm degree, no matter which way he spins it, no matter what way he puts it, this is going to get an enormous amount of venom at it.
Which is interesting, considering this is the same Pope, which the leftist media tends to spin to look like he's on their side.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm not obviously condemning. I'm not trying to ruffle feathers talking about this, but on certain subjects, you need to be able to have a variety of views and discuss it with people, right? So it's a difficult subject because of all the emotion attached to it. I mean, for goodness sakes, you can't even talk about hell without people getting upset.
No, but Rowan Atkinson can make a really funny segment about it. Wait, I sent you a link to it. Did you watch it?
I don't think I did. I don't know if I got the link. If I did, I must not have seen it. But no, I did. We talked about it in the show, and I looked at it. I didn't watch it, but you mentioned it, and I need to watch it.
It's hilarious, and back when comedy was allowed to be comedy.
Yeah, right. Well, and I want to put an idea out there too. Is in terms of intellectual thought and freedom of expression, freedom of speech, right? In terms of that, in order to be able to reach your own independent thought and be able to be free, you have to have the freedom to openly question things, and you also have the freedom to make mistakes. You have to have the freedom to be wrong. Right now, you're not allowed to make you're not allowed to be intellectually wrong on anything. You have to have the right opinions and say the right things. You have to be completely compliant in every area, or else
I instantly thought of the East German guy from Cool Runnings. Have you seen that movie?
I've not. Tell me about it.
Well, anyway, it's about the first Jamaican bobsled team. They go to the 1988 Winter Olympics in Calgary, Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this one guy. He's from the East German team, and he's a
Mm-hmm.
bit of a bully to these guys.
Mm-hmm. That's
No,
fitting.
yeah, one of these Jamaican guys, sort of stands up to him. You better come back with a damn good apology, or else. The German guy's just, or as thought. I don't know why, but I've sort of forgot what you were talking about a second ago before when I hit that thought, but that just popped into my head. Or as thought.
Yeah.
Hey Jamaica, or as thought.
But yeah, that's kind of the idea, is just that um you're not allowed to discuss it at all. You're not allowed to talk about I mean, I don't want to talk about gender theory this episode, obviously. That's a hot button topic. I want to kind of devote more of a show to that.
Yeah, we can kick that hornet's nest later.
Yeah, but it's like here's the thing, here's my point. Is that obviously the Catholic Church is going to be under a lot of pressure because they're kind of, in a lot of ways, the last holdout for Western civilization. And if your goal is to destroy Western civilization, the Catholic Church is almost one of the last institutions that, I mean, they've in a lot of ways have built Western civilization, but they're the holdout to it. But also because here's my whole point I'm trying to make is whether you agree with the Pope's decision or not, in church doctrine, there's certain principles that are taught. This is part of church doctrine. You don't have to agree with it, obviously. You don't have to say, I think this is morally right. You can have your own opinion on it. My point is that this is what the church teaches, and this is part of the doctrine. And the Pope is in a position where it's like, well, I have to uphold the doctrine. Otherwise, maybe I'm not fit for this office, right? There are certain obligations. And like I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but like I have certain obligations and I'm bound to follow the church's teaching on this. And it's very, very, very clear.
Which is what he's been saying since day one of his pontificate.
Yeah. And because the standard isn't applied evenly to, say, other religions that teach the similar things, and maybe in much more harsher tones. Islam just openly stones homosexuals. Islam openly kills homosexuals and condones that. That's my point. And Islam isn't held to that standard because if you push this on Islam, you get a violent, immediate pushback on it. Christianity, in a lot of ways, teaches nonviolence, so you're not going to get that reaction. Christianity,
not that it was perfectly applied over the years.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, Edward Gibbon put it this way in his book, the first book of The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. He said Christianity is primarily a defensive religion. Which, you could talk about the Crusades, and we should really talk about the Crusades at some point. That's another hornet's nest. But my point is that because there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation about it, and the way it's taught is not accurate to what actually happened.
I know. I went to public school.
Yeah, me too. But you can poke at Christians, and there's not going to be a lot of consequence to it. In fact, you'll probably get praised by it, certainly by academia. You poke at Islam, now you're going to get condemned by academia, but you're going to get very violent reactions, both verbally and in some cases physically, depending where you live, from Islam. So it's definitely double standard case.
You don't even have to go to the extreme of poking Islam nowadays. Now you just poke the wrong activist groups here in the United States. BLM.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. You use.
Yeah, I might want to reconsider that Minnesota trip.
Well, the thing is that there's domestic terrorism, which I think in the back of our mind we know there's a lot of organizations that are very active right now that are saying it's all peaceful, but deep down I think a lot of us know no, it's not peaceful. The evidence does not show that. But the second thing I was going to say is there's a kind of social terrorism too, and that's what we see about certain subjects, is that you'll be terrorized, you'll be mocked, the whole social group will attack you if you venture into certain areas of intellectual consideration or thought, because you have to be able to debate ideas and discuss them. And if you say no one's allowed to talk about it and only the accepted view, obviously it's not, intellectual thought is not the focus there. It's about compliance. It's about obey the state or at the point of a gun, which kind of ties into the rest of our topics, I think.
Yeah, but if it pleases the court, I would also like to go on to the statement by the CDF.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Okay, so what I have before me is the actual document that was put forward by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. You can find this online at the Vatican website.
Okay.
Let's see. Let me just.
Before I get ahead of myself. Yes, thank you, Mike.
Yeah. Hey, I do that all the time. You know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we take turns.
Anyway,
Not like that, you perverts. Hey, I didn't say anything bad. I was condemning vices and implications, you fools. Anyway, please continue.
All right, back to the Catholic Church's response.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the question that was proposed, and I think this came from the German Bishops' Conference. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Mm-hmm.
But the question that was proposed was, does the church have the power to give the blessings to unions of persons of the same sex? The response, negative. Now, it goes on for a couple pages, giving basically an explanation, but the short and sweet version is that a blessing is what's called a sacramental, and a sacramental, basically, it's a symbol that recognizes that resembles the sacraments. Like baptism, matrimony, holy orders, anointing of the sick. I'm not going to go through all 7.
Yeah.
Even though I went through more than half.
Mm-hmm.
But these in and of themselves do not confer grace in the same way that sacraments do.
Mm-hmm.
But what they actually do is they prepare one to receive and to cooperate with grace. So, with that in mind, the object or the ideal to be blessed must be ordered in such a way to receive grace in accordance to God's design. So, it is for that reason that a homosexual union cannot be validly blessed, because, as I sort of mentioned before, sacramentals imitate the sacraments. Therefore, blessing a homosexual union or like a live-in boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, even rendering a blessing unto those, it's sort of an imitation, and actually done in certain contexts, a mockery of the nuptial blessing. The Catholic Church upholds the view of marriage as between one man and one woman, bound in fidelity for life.
Yeah.
And it does that for a reason.
Yeah.
And
obviously, that there are, agree with that or disagree with that. That's the ideal. And this is a very, very, this isn't a new thing that's coming up. This has been a standard for multiple centuries, for almost like 1,000, 2,000 years. This isn't
millennia.
Yeah.
And even before then, like several millennia.
Right. So this isn't like the church is trying to take a hard stance and we want to really crush those people. It's not like that. It's just, this has been a standard of the church doctrine.
And the document does go on to say that, and I quote, "The answer to the proposed dubium does not preclude the blessings given to individual persons with homosexual inclinations, who manifest the will to live in fidelity to the revealed plans of God as proposed by church teaching."
And that's, I think, do you think that's a reasonable thing to add on there?
Yeah.
Me too.
It's no one's saying that individuals can't go get blessings. I mean, there's plenty of people with homosexual tendencies who are in good standing with the church. I mean, immediately that comes to mind. Milo Yiannopoulos actually recently.
Yeah.
I almost said came out, but I realized that could be taken way out of context.
There's at least 4 different ways that you could take that, and I thought of all of them at once, Mike.
No, but in all seriousness, until proven otherwise, I'm gonna take the story to believe that he means this with full sincerity, that he has reverted to the Catholic Church and has consecrated his life to the patronage of Saint Joseph. So, which is not something that's generally taken lightly.
Well, it's also interesting too. You mentioned that because Milo has expressed in a show a couple times before that, generally speaking, like he actually was open and he said, when I was younger, I actually got molested by a priest.
Oh, I did not know
Yeah.
about this.
Yeah. Well, the reason why Milo fell out of favor was because they took his statements in an old podcast and they misconstrued it to say that he supported pedophilia.
Hmm.
So the media kind of was, it's kind of funny watching the narrative, the whole media narrative of the party of like, oh yeah, we're starting to kind of lean into pedophilia. It's okay. It's all right, fine. Milo supports pedophilia. Everybody 180 turn. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. How dare you even say anything like that, Milo? And that got him kicked off of Breitbart. So he got that. He was the editor in chief there, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe
I don't
he's
think
editor
he.
in
I
chief.
think he was an editor, but I don't think he was editor in chief.
Yeah, I think that is, now that you mentioned that, I think that he was an editor. He was one of the bigger editors, but maybe not the editor in chief. Needless to say, he had a prominent role there and he was kicked off for that reason. And that's kind of how they semi got him canceled and started getting momentum against him, saying just get him off all social media, which eventually they did. They purged him like they purged many other voices, like Alex Jones, Stephen Molyneux. They're trying to come for Crowder right now, but he's got a vicious half Asian lawyer.
The half Asian lawyer, Bill Richmond.
Yeah,
I want that guy on my team.
yeah, me too. But and then the media kind of went right back to, after a few years after that settled, and enough people forgot about it. They started going back with that narrative again. But my whole point with Milo is that that's really interesting that he would make that decision, all things considered.
Yeah, no.
And he's Jewish.
What?
Yeah, he's Jewish.
Okay, so
he's a Catholic Jew married to a black guy.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Well,
and
in a relationship with a black guy.
No, he's married.
Legally.
He's legally married, yeah. In the state.
But you know, he wants to live his life. He said that he wants to live his life more in line with the teaching of the Catholic Church. And you know what? Good on him. Welcome home, brother.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I got to say to that. You know, and until proven otherwise, that's got to be my greeting to him. And even if I'm proven wrong, even if this is just some sort of wild comedy stunt, which he's also been known to do, it's tragic. But you know what? Hey, the door's still open, buddy.
Yeah.
Oh, I just woke up my daughter. Whoopsie.
Before you cut it. But, no, I was going to say, so it's kind of interesting. It's also kind of interesting seeing how in certain, I guess, people with more conservative values, which mean actually which is, as the Overton window shifts further and further left, they're taking all the moderates and now they're clumping them all together. So now conservatism is meeting a much broader, more diverse line of thinking, which is like, that's cool. That's fantastic. Would have never expected that in my lifetime. But what my point is that it's interesting kind of seeing the conservative groups kind of becoming the Isle of Misfit Toys, which I've always been a member of. And it's kind of interesting, we're misfits. We don't think like a lot of other people. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a really good thing, but it also kind of means you don't kind of fit in with a lot of groups. You fit in the right kind of groups. You're more acutely aware of that. But it's kind of, it's seeing people start to be more drawn to Catholicism, even in some cases, not even being Catholic, but just saying positive things about it. It's really interesting as the years go on. Because I know that, and by the way, before I kind of go on to the next subject, what did we finish reading that whole statement, by the way?
I just sort of went over it briefly, yes, because I'm not going to read this whole thing.
Right. Because one of the things I kind of notice, I kind of just shift the subject a little bit, was just what's the role of state and church and society as a whole. In the first few episodes, we kind of talk a little bit about statism, where it's a worship of the state, but to kind of shift that a little bit more, what does it really mean? Like what role does what is the church exactly, Mike? How would you define the church? What role does it play in society, and how does that what's its relationship to the state?
Well, and I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a canon lawyer. I am not a theologian. I'm just giving my personal definition. What the church is that body of believers who profess allegiance to Christ the King
Mm-hmm.
and all that implies,
Mm-hmm.
and try to live their lives accordingly.
Okay.
I thought I had a bit of a more of an afterthought, but that sort of, you know what happened to that train of thought.
Yeah.
Just like an unstoppable.
So let me ask you this, Mike, because this is not something I have an answer to. I'm just kind of just asking out of curiosity. But how does the Catholic Church generally feel about other Christian denominations like Orthodoxy or Lutheranism, for example?
I'm actually kind of glad you brought that up because, especially under the last three popes, actually, more or less the last 4 or 5 popes,
Mm-hmm.
actually, it'd be 6, going all the way back to I think John the 23rd was the one who actually started uh, sort of reaching out.
Mm-hmm.
But I should say Saint John the 23rd. He was canonized only a couple of years ago.
Hmm.
But we love you guys. I mean, that was actually pretty much the whole point behind the Second Vatican Council, was pretty much saying, hey, what do we have in common? Let's build on that common ground.
Yeah.
And especially in recent times, Pope Francis has been uh, building up better relations with like the Lutheran Church, with Orthodoxy. I don't know how he managed this, but getting better relations with the Russian Orthodox Church.
Yeah. That's saying a lot because they've
But
had an antagonistic history, right?
yes, we're not going to go into the whole history in this episode, but I had a thought. Oh, yes. Interesting factoid, though,
Mm-hmm.
is that if any Christian is baptized, a Baptist, a Lutheran, Orthodox, what have you, if they are baptized in the Trinitarian format, meaning baptized in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, they are recognized as being baptized into the Catholic Church.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the word Catholic for the first 500 years wasn't actually a noun. It was an adjective.
Really?
Yeah, Catholic just means universal.
So the church, like you're saying too, that the church
Oh,
overall.
wait a minute. Did I say 500 years? I meant 1500.
That's okay. The point still stands is that generally speaking, that's a really good line. So I was just looking at something very briefly. So generally speaking, that the church has been focusing on more on commonalities and building up relationships because we're kind of realizing that, I guess for lack of a better term, in general, Christendom is like the thing that seems to be the biggest target for everything the world over right now, especially seems like in popular culture. So I think that that's a really wise move of the Catholic Church, especially the popes, of doing this too. It's also kind of nice.
More for spiritual reasons than political, but you're pretty much right.
Yeah. But I mean, if it's for spiritual reasons, I'm completely down with that. But and obviously intentions inside, the result is like, let's focus on commonalities. That's something I wholeheartedly agree. That's why I don't attack, there's certain, very intense Christian cults that I just don't feel the need to attack, which, there's enough critics of them already. Not to name any names, but I want to focus on commonalities because, Mike, let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the reason why Christianity is so attacked by statists, right, for lack of a better term,
is because it's so divided?
Not because it's so divided, but because it's a threat to the state. It's a rival power that the state has to topple in order to reign supreme.
Duh.
Yeah.
I mean, any notion of there being a god is a threat to statism.
Yeah.
And even more so, or not even more so, I'm sorry, I shouldn't put it that way. Even more, I guess, prevalent, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm not using the right term, but you'll probably understand my meaning. But there being a vicar of Christ
Mm-hmm.
present on Earth and all the powers that implies,
Mm-hmm.
that is also a very big threat to statism. And that's, I guess, part of the reason why they want to spin Pope Francis the way they do.
Yeah.
Making him out to be this liberal, hippie, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you actually read his documents, he's actually fairly conservative.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he says in Amoris Laetitia, and it's actually quoted in this document. Yeah, it's right here. And for background, Amoris Laetitia was actually his first apostolic exhortation I can remember that was really starting to get criticized. And that's when the de facto schism was actually starting to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But he says in Amoris Laetitia, and I quote, "There are absolutely no grounds for considering homosexual unions to be in any way similar or even remotely analogous to God's plan for marriage and the family." End quote.
Mm-hmm.
Peter has spoken. The matter is settled.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just getting back on sort of the topic. No, they have to spin the papacy that way because he's a threat, and
Yeah.
the popes, especially in like the Middle Ages, knew this
Mm-hmm.
because I think it happened like 5 times in history where the Pope actually dethroned kings
Yeah.
for abuse of power.
Which is, if you're purely, well, you talked about, you'll have to remind me, was it Saint Thomas of Aquinas? Was that correct?
Thomas Aquinas.
Thomas Aquinas, thank you. And we talked about him, where it was,
And yes, he is a canonized saint, so it would be Saint Thomas Aquinas.
Saint Thomas, okay. And he had, where, what, I don't remember particularly which king it was, but you were telling the story about how this king came along, and they were obviously, these guys were butting heads because the king wanted absolute power. And
no, that's Thomas of Becket.
Oh, Thomas of Becket. Thank you for correcting me. It's Thomas of Becket. And this guy was forcing him, like, you better recognize my power. You better recognize my power.
Yeah,
and he
recognize
said,
my power over the church. It's like, no.
Right. It's like, you must bow. It's like, it's almost that line from Esther in the Bible where it's like, bow to me. I will make you bow to me. I will make you bow to me. And it's like, I can't do that. I only bow before my God
and my king.
My God. Amen. And my king. Yeah. I only bow before my God.
I will never bow to you.
Yeah. And this guy's here, and he's saying, I will kill you if you don't. And he said, well, effectively, and no matter in a certain choice of words, he said, you can kill my body, but you can't kill my spirit, and my spirit will not bow to you.
It actually kind of reminds me of another St. Thomas, and that would be St. Thomas More, who refused to recognize the king's marriage, the King of England's marriage to his second wife post-divorce, and lost his head for it.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting, Mike. Have you ever just kind of stopped and realized that when you get out of the public school sphere, you kind of realize that you start seeing modern parallels see today and past segments of history. Like, a lot of the modern conflicts we're dealing with aren't necessarily new.
I mean, yeah, I think it's in Proverbs, a line in Proverbs that says, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah. Or the way Mark Twain put it, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And interesting you bring that up, because I actually made a Facebook post to that effect, sort of. But, I say, Nero tried to destroy the Catholic Church. Catholic Church is still here. Where's Nero? Yeah. Napoleon tried to destroy the Catholic Church. Church is still here. Where's Napoleon?
Yeah.
Hitler tried to destroy the church. Hitler's gone. The Third Reich is gone. Or the church is still here. Where's the Third Reich?
Well, it depends who you ask.
You'd think people would see a pattern by now.
It's interesting how it's like the aggressive force is the one that on the church is the one that seems to not last. Exactly. Which is because you think it'd be the other way around.
Especially when speaking from a Catholic perspective, and you got the Vatican City State, which is like this,
Mm-hmm.
and then you got a standing army of just 500 men with
Mm-hmm.
lances.
That's actually pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. Did I tell you that story on air about Pope Pius XII meeting with von
no,
Ribbentrop?
no. Why don't you save it for the next episode because I'm kind of
Okay.
concerned how much time we have.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's save it for the next time.
But yeah, the one of the kind of things is kind of wanted to just directly touch on a little bit too is not just the role of the state, but it seems like the church. Because I was reading an article on, I believe I got it from Infowars, for example. And sometimes they have some. Most of their articles sometimes are just really short, or hey, watch this episode, Alex Jones. Watch this episode, Alex Jones. Other episodes just like a very very articulate article taken from a different media outlet, or sometimes written specifically for Infowars. And one was talking about how the church is this almost thorn in the side of not just globalism in general, but also untapped state power, the power hungry. It's like diametrically opposed because you have to get that out of the way. It's almost like the state wants absolute godlike power and the church is in the way. So, I mean, if you think about it too, and we've talked about this before, in communist societies, for example, specifically in the Soviet Union, that was one of the first things they went to when the Bolsheviks had power. They went for the church. They would demolish churches overnight. They'd have a great big team of a wrecking crew. They wouldn't do it in public daylight. They do it in the middle of the night at 3 a.m., 2, 3 a.m., go and destroy everything, take the whole thing down really, really fast, and then get out when it was daylight. People are like, oh, where did that ancient church go? It's been around for 200 years. Soviets destroyed it.
And interesting you bring that up because there's also the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Moscow, which is a Catholic cathedral. The Soviets actually turned that into a warehouse.
Really?
Yeah, and the Catholic Church in Russia only just got it back in like 1995.
Wow, because the Soviet Union dissolved in 92, right?
90.
90. Okay, wow.
It just took it because the government was so like
anti-Catholic.
No, what? Well, yeah, it is anti-Catholic, but it's just the bureaucracy was just so complex that it took that long to get it back.
Right.
Like it didn't have so much to do with government hostility as it did with just bureaucratic mess.
Yeah.
And they got it back like a piece at a time.
That fits.
Which is interesting because the actual Orthodox cathedral was completely destroyed. That is to say, the Cathedral of Christ the Savior, whose bells I love, by the way. Yeah, I when we're done recording, I'll screen share and I'll let you listen to the bells of Christ the Savior Cathedral in Moscow because it is one of the most beautiful sounds on earth.
Please do.
But
please do. But the point I was going to kind of get to directly too was that, you know, it's, and maybe we need to do another episode on this too, but I'm kind of noticing how I think a mistake with when it comes to the church and the state, a lot of times, and Thomas Sowell pointed this out very well in his book Conflict of Visions, which I enormously recommend. It's a fantastic read and it's a real treat when you read it. What presuppositions people kind of make, these philosophical underpinnings that underlay the roots of a lot of our intellectual thought, like our worldviews, everything we believe, even as human beings, because most of the time we don't really want to think that hard to these presuppositions we're making. We just assume this is true, this is true, this is true, this is true. Most of the time, most people go their entire lives just continuing to believe the things they believed in childhood. Or extending that worldview out of childhood, just building on it. They don't go back and challenge that or reconsider everything. Most people don't. Most people don't at all, because it's extremely difficult because it means you're broke and everything's broken down. You have to rebuild it on something new.
Guilty.
Yeah, I've been the same way for sure in many ways.
I was a huge fan of churchmilitant.com and I started dabbling into like radical traditionalism, which is another video in and of itself. But suffice it to say, it came to the point where I was, watching Church Militant. It was either I either stick with them, or I stick with Peter and his successor.
Yeah,
which they won't openly come out and say that they're schismatic, but from what I was getting from it, and I actually went into schism several times. It took my dad almost literally reaching to the phone and pulling me back in.
Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like, when I say schism, I mean something along the lines of, like, the Society of St. Pius X, who claim to be Catholic, but think that we haven't had a legitimate pope since, what, the 50s? Which is kind of funny when you think about it, but I'll do that in my own Mike on the Rocks thing.
Yeah, please do.
But getting more back on the point, with these presuppositions influencing our judgments. I used to absolutely hate Bishop Barron, for example. Bishop Robert Barron, who is an auxiliary bishop in the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, I think. But he has a YouTube show. It's called World on Fire, and I used to abhor the man because he had once said, and I think this might be a quote taken out of context, but he said, "We have a reasonable hope that all men are saved," which could be looking back, it could be a quote taken out of context, and I may have misquoted it. I believe we have a reasonable hope that all men can be saved, as in the door to salvation is open to everyone. That doesn't necessarily that all men or even a majority of men will. But that's sort of still off the topic. Point is, I allowed my affiliation with Church Militant to cloud my judgment because they gave me a new purpose in life.
Yeah. When you're, it's kind of funny too. I really want to touch on that because I think that's really, really pertinent. And I think it's been a lot of people's experiences. As what I kind of noticed is that you had a lot of militant atheism and you had moral relativism kind of hitting I guess for lack of a better term, the open air discourse, right? The cultural discussion, the mainstream discussion that I certainly seemed like everyone was talking about is that you had nihilism, you had moral relativism, and you had militant atheism. They all kind of form this sphere of like, basically there is no objective meaning, there's no objective purpose, there's no meaning and personal responsibility. Everything is what you decide it is. It's what you decide something is, therefore it's valuable. And the problem is that not only does that clash with thousands of years of culture that have said there's personal responsibility is important. You have to be personally responsible for yourself and people around you to greater or lesser degrees. There's a lot of responsibility and there is objective meaning and there is objective value.
Which is the whole point of the church.
Correct. Stephen Molyneux pointed that out, that this whole framework of, how did he put it? He put it like universalism, a universal ethic. Right? That it's not like the way Plato taught it is that people and slaves have different amounts of value. It was the Catholic Church that started to say, no, that's a universal ethic that applies to everyone. They started...
in that context, I would say more of a universal value.
That's what I mean. Not like universalism, like there's truth in everything, right? Not like that, but there is universal morality and there's universal truth. Like you apply the same standard to everything. That's what I think he meant and I meant. As well.
Not that it was perfectly applied. Like even Peter got corrected on the application of that teaching.
I'm sure, but the church.
You're sure it's in the Bible?
Yeah. Yeah. It's my whole point is that you have this framework of thinking. It was developed, and that's what Western civilization was built on. So you have this new thing being introduced that's coming out of not just the universities, but also the media in a lot of ways, is not only you've got this hopeless nihilism where nothing means anything at all, and there's no hope, and all the meaning that your parents brought or their lives are completely meaningless because it's completely arbitrary what they invented, so why do anything? I think so many people, speaking of personal experience, and people I've spoken with when I was younger, just had this sense of hopelessness and meaning. It didn't mean they're immoral people, didn't mean they were bad people, but defective. But what it meant is there's no, it's like the whole framework of reality and all the framework of your philosophy and thinking is completely destroyed. So you're completely adrift at sea. You're in a boat without a rudder. You have no compass, you have no map, and you have no sail. You're completely at the whim of anything that pushes you. So I think people were looking for meaning. People have been looking for meaning for centuries, of course, but specifically, it seemed like it was hitting at everyone, everywhere for so long. And so you have this gigantic void of like, we've ripped ourselves free of religion. It's like we're pushing, we're running, and we leap off the dock and we land in the water and like, yay, we're free of the curse of land. Now we can do whatever we want. We can go in any direction we want. And it's like, now what? There's a current. And it's like, well, inevitably, the way you're being directed is you need some kind of meaning to underpin your life to exist, right? And so I think inevitably when you have a lack of meaning, you're looking for something to fill that. And the fastest way to fill that, and one of the more effective ways of filling that without contradicting your new existing framework of reality, is to become a radical, right? If
Right.
you have
And guilty on that charge as well.
right.
When I'm not reciting everything you just said in the voice of Brad Garrett.
Right. You are that's the only conclusion you're left with. And so not only because it's like I get to keep my beliefs intact, but I get to build on it purpose. So I get to stay the same person. I don't need to rebuild on the truth and change where I'm going. No, I get to stay the same path. I'm right. All right. I will not question myself. Right. We're just going to build on it. Now I can keep my beliefs, my nihilistic or postmodern belief system. I can keep it. And now I've got momentum. Now I've got a direction. Now I've got an enemy. I can go after something. Right. And we're not talking about any of these presuppositions anymore. What we're left with is now you just have Marxism. You have naked, open, militant Marxism. That's all. It's all people really have for some kind of meaning. Now I've got an enemy. I've got a way of thinking about history. I've got people I can kill. I got people I can punish. I can fight for some semblance of justice. And it's I mean, inevitably, what it leads to, obviously, is statism. But this is kind of what it grows out of, and it's not that it just shapes everyone's thinking, but like this is how we kind of arrived here. Is that because of when you don't have a rock or an anchor on, you're carried with the tide that culture goes, which is a lot of people. I don't know if I would suspect it's probably majority of people, the average person. It's a mainstream view. But if you have a rock and rudder, you stay in that position as maybe the Overton window shifts or as the tides keep going, you have a stable foundation you can stick with. But if you have nothing to believe in, your head can be, if you don't stand for something, you'll believe anything. And if your head is empty and you've got nothing to build on, your head can be filled with anything that people sufficiently put enough force on. That's why so many people, that's why I think American society in general is at the mercy of many radical Marxists and statists, is because they're pushing and the people don't have any, their whole framework has nothing to stand on. So it's like, well, why wouldn't I just bow over? Right? Because all the social consequences are against me if I take any kind of stand. And I have no reason to stand this because everyone told me it's wrong. So, oh yeah, I'll just completely appease them. And that's why we have authoritarians in power in many ways.
Coraggio. Have courage.
Yeah. You have to have something to believe in. Thomas Sowell goes into this in a kind of a different direction. I want to do more of a longer piece on that particular subject, but Christians oftentimes do this too. I'm going to take my basic assumptions and I'm going to read the Bible through the basic presupposition lenses I have.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm wrong, it's the Bible's wrong, or you misinterpreted the Bible, or you mistranslated it, which happens, but I will not question my base views. I can't be wrong. I must be everything else that's wrong.
Been there. And that was a really good discussion, but we are sadly running out of time. So, Mr. Benks, your book quote, please.
I'm going to quote Xenophon of Athens.
Is this one I've never heard of?
Yeah. He wrote a book called Cyrus the Great, who was one of my personal heroes. He said, quote, "Willing obedience always beats forced obedience."
And pretty much every conflict we've been in for the past over the course of the 20th century proves that, with the exception of Vietnam, but that was sort of an unfair matchup. But yeah, because you had the German army in both world wars, which both used conscription, and we kicked their butts both times.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, so the Soviet army, and they're the ones that actually marched into Berlin, but that's a whole nother topic. But in any case, we thank you so much for joining us on this lovely podcast. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you must. No. Please subscribe. We love you guys. Only comment if you must.
Freaking love you guys.
No homo.
I'm allowed one swear word. Throw me a bone.
True. Quack.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Ready?
But you know what? I might just censor that just out of spite.
This is the part of the show where we spite 5 of every Benker's words. Because I can.
Anyway.
Anyway.
We hope you all have a good night. Have a good week. Pax et bonum! So, if you like our podcast, check us out on Parler. Also, like us on Facebook. Check us out on Rumble. And also, check us out on our podcast platforms of Anchor, Spotify, and what's the last one? Google Podcasts. God bless.